name is Mathews, and I founded the Gatsby open source project about 4 years ago. And then a year and a half ago, I co-founded a Gatsby company to kind of shepherd and push forward the open source project. And I'm the CEO there. At Gatsby, the idea is kind of solving the age-old problem of like how to build a great website. And and so we kind of combine modern tooling and modern JavaScript frameworks, React, and kind of some innovative ideas around how to like build and deploy your website so that your websites are as fast as possible and the development experience is like as smooth and as productive as possible. Gatsby initially, when I first started, did not have GraphQL. This was actually before GraphQL was invented, but I did a major rewrite of Gatsby a few years ago and decided to place a bet at that time on GraphQL just because, for a variety of reasons. GraphQL was already, I'd used GraphQL at like a previous startup I was working on and just really, really loved the experience, like the ability to create kind of like a product-centric schema that, was easy to explore and easy to kind of, place right into your components was really transformational just because, experience that I had building other web apps where it was like extremely difficult to know what data you were getting from the back end and, you couldn't like connect up different parts of your schema. So there wasn't any sort of way of like, okay, I needed this bits of this and this bits of this. It was always like very ad hoc and very, just ugly. And also then when you're in the JavaScript in your code, like trying to understand like, okay, this particular view, what data does it have access to, was always felt like way more complicated than it needed to be. So, because, of course, any application, you're frequently making tweaks. So it's like, you're adding a bit more data or changing a bit how it's expressed and on and on. And so just having that like easy ability to like be manipulating both your GraphQL query and your React component was just like a super nice kind of developer experience improvement. So I could see that like GraphQL was like a huge step forward just in kind of developer experience for building things. And I could see that already GraphQL had a lot of momentum at the time. And I just felt that tying Gatsby's kind of developer experience to that would be, a great improvement. And then also that like GraphQL as kind of an ecosystem was going to keep growing like tremendously over the next few years. And tying Gatsby to that kind of momentum and that excitement would be kind of really beneficial. Developers love GraphQL for very practical reasons in which it solves real problems. There's kind of the traditional, touted benefits of GraphQL, that you query exactly for what you want. You have kind of like this like IDE for like, creating the queries. You don't have kind of overfetching or underfetching. These aren't just like, these are real things. If you built any sort of web app, especially like a JavaScript real-time, kind of web app, these are like huge problems that you run into, even at very small scales. And especially as, both the application and the team gets larger, these are just like very difficult systemic problems to solve. And so, pretty much any company that's building anything is like struggles with these problems. And so they look at GraphQL and the touted benefits, and then they try it out and they're like, it works, and then they just adopt it more and more. So people are baking GraphQL into products just because it's such a simple contract. It's not like anything, it's not like a technology per se, it's more of a conceptual framework for how do you establish like a contract between a client and a server, where the server can say, I have these things, you can do these things, and then the client can say, I want this data and like I want these things done to this data and whatever. And so because it's such it's such a simple idea, it's just like a contract for how to express, this contract between the server and the client. It's, you can use it in all sorts of different ways that, may or may not have been, originally thought of when the team at Facebook started working on it. And so like simple kind of like ideas, simple abstractions like that are, lend themselves also to different uses. Like if you just think about like basic programming abstractions, like arrays or objects or dictionaries or whatever you want to call them, I mean, they're used for gazillions of different reasons, and GraphQL feels kind of like that same sort of level of thing, where it's like it's a fairly simple abstraction, but it's like a really powerful one that can be used for all sorts of different reasons. And so Gatsby, for example, we don't have kind of this. We don't have like a running server and like a JavaScript client or iOS client or whatever that's like making calls across the network. Like with Gatsby's usage, it's like all kind of inside the same product, but the same relationship exists where you have a server who knows about, who has data available and who has like capabilities that it exposes, and then you have like the client, which is like the Gatsby developer, who says like, hey, I want this data, I want these things done to this data. And then the server, in this case, can fulfill that. So my favorite parts of GraphQL probably are just the ability to put the query right inside the React component, which is Relay, kind of pioneered this method. And I find that, and Gatsby does the same thing, where you put your query right inside your component. And I find that is hugely helpful for just kind of like self-documenting code. It's like, what can this component do? Or, what data is available? It's just like right there. So that's like proved really helpful in all the projects that I've used GraphQL with. And then the other bit, my other favorite thing is just GraphQL. Just being able to, try out different queries and kind of explore, either novel schemas, like ones you're not very familiar with, or even ones you write yourself. It's like, it's way easier, even if like you wrote it all, inside and out, it's still way easier just to like fiddle with queries inside GraphQL. And so just that workflow of like, you're like creating a new screen and you're like sketch out, okay, this is how it's going to look like. And then you identify the data it needs and you kind of go, play around in GraphQL until you have that. You pop it into your React component and then you start writing the UI. It's just extremely fluid and like just, it's just a very productive way to build things. Kind of our view at Gatsby of the world is that websites, web applications are just getting more complex, more sophisticated, and they have to be like faster and like easier to use and like change quicker because you're competing against more and more. I mean, the internet is like this interesting beast in that you're competing literally oftentimes against the entire world, and if you're the best whatever, then that's then you're going to get more traffic, more revenue, et cetera, and and so this is what's kind of like pushing this like rapid kind of evolution of web technologies and web tooling and so forth, is because like every team is just trying to get better and better and better, faster and faster, and GraphQL is just like a really powerful tool for driving like the best website and web app experiences. And so that's why we see like all the best teams and companies adopting GraphQL in droves, because it's solving kind of long-standing problems that prevent sites and applications from being as good as they can, and prevent teams from like iterating as quickly as they could otherwise.